right, everyone. It is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces. This is what you've been waiting on. The best hour of your week. I know you missed us. It is episode 29. All right. So let me bring on my co-host, Mark Boatwright-Frost. How are you doing today, Mark?
Well, I am having such a case of deja vu right now.
Did I do a good job of doing it exactly how it was before?
Pretty close. Pretty close.
Thank you. We had some technical difficulties, but we're here. How are you doing today, Mark?
I'm doing great. And you, sir?
Oh man, I'm doing good. All I can do is smile. You don't want to know how the sausage is made, but we guarantee it's going to be delicious when it hits your plate, even
Yep.
if it's a vegan sausage. So,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
and and on that same note, never read The Jungle by Upton Sinclair if you ever want to eat sausage again. On that note,
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read a quote by Daniel Christian Wall. A human being is a part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts, and his feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for our few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Nobody is able to achieve this completely, but the striving for such achievement is in itself a part of the liberation and the foundation for inner security. Daniel Christian Wall.
so I wanted to start with that because the title of this is Learning to Human. And I'm sure everybody out there is going, I'm a human. What does it mean, learning to human? What does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we are Homo sapiens species, which is denoted as human. But I would challenge you to ask yourself what that means on a greater scale. What does it mean to be human? And I think Daniel Christian Wall got a piece of it. We don't seem to understand that we're part of the whole. Whether you think of this as some metaphysical thing or just the fact that we're part of an ecosystem that supports each other, we tend to break things down into the most separate ways we can make them. And we think of, the fact that, one species goes extinct, it doesn't matter to us because we got thousands and thousands of others. But what happens when we don't? I mean, scientists after scientists say a diverse ecosystem is a healthy ecosystem. When the ecosystem gets less diverse, it gets less healthy. And we are not separate from that as human beings. We are a part of that. We just delude ourselves into feeling we are separate from it and separate from each other, yet we're interdependent. So I don't know if I'm going to send you I don't even know how to do this, but I found a graph that I'm putting up on the website. I actually had to make one for it, and I think it's a PNG now, but it shows the population growth on this planet from 1900 to 2020,
Okay.
and it's pretty astounding. And I took it from 1960 to 2020, and it looks like a hockey stick. And you can guess that the low part of the hockey stick is from 1900 to about 1960, and then it goes up like that. And I've said this before, and people don't really understand it because, especially younger people, they don't have a frame of reference for this. But since I was born in 1957, the population on this planet has tripled. Tripled.
Yeah, that's what are we at? 8 billion?
Just shy of 8 billion, 794 billion people. And actually, let me pull it up. I can give you exact quotes on that. Just a second.
That is a tremendous amount of people. We think our 400 million approximately here in the United States is a lot of people. We're one fifth
Yeah.
of the global population. We are teeny.
Yeah, there are a lot of people on the planet, and people question, well, we can't be causing climate change. There's not enough of us. I said, well, there's three times as many of them as many of us as there was in 1955, so or 1957. Okay, there we go. Nope, wrong page. One second. Okay, there are at this moment, and this is a clock, so it keeps changing. There are 7,932,833,977, 8, 9, 80, 81, 82 people. You get the
Mm,
idea? We are
hmm.
currently using up the renewable resources of 1.7 Earths. That's
Okay.
1.7, that's almost two Earths. Unless things change, we will need three Earths by 2050. Think about that. We're using resources at such a spectacular rate that we are actually using the resources like we had two planets today.
Mm,
Let that rattle around for a minute. So in 1960, we had a little over 2 billion people. 2 billion people on the planet. About 260 billion. By 2020, we are just shy of 8 billion people.
8 billion.
Yeah.
Wow.
So scientists say this stuff, but they say it in so many ways that people just, I mean, alert, 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 population control, this, that, and the other. We've used up all of these resources, da, 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 da. But it doesn't make it real for people. But when it becomes real, it means that you'll be drinking muddy water. When it becomes real, it will be that there won't be food on the shelves.
Okay.
When it becomes, when it is used the term used so often in movies, when things get real, it will be ugly for all of us. So, what does it mean to be human? It means to be connected to the planet, which we obviously are not. We live in an ecosystem that is being destroyed. And if the ecosystem goes away, we don't thrive. We die. We go extinct. It's just that simple. It's not alarmist. It's not anything else. But if we do not curb our enthusiasm for using resources, we will go extinct. It's just that simple. We will probably go extinct in this century. So being
Mm,
human is having compassion enough for each other to pay attention to that. And that doesn't mean that we all have to cut back and everything else, but it does mean we cut back to an extreme degree where we are all, living in some dystopian future. What it means is that we have to demand our corporations actually recycle and reuse, and that profit margin cannot be the measure of our success. Our measure of our success should be the measure of our humanity, not of our profits. And they are not mutually exclusive. They just mean that more people have to share in the benefits. And we have to look at things so that happens. I was in a conversation on Facebook earlier today, and you know how hard I try not to get involved in these. But there, Josh Farley posted something from the Sun saying that a local center had is actually that was a disabled person, a disabled facility. It's been closed for some time. Is actually being converted to 80 homes, and then he goes on to talk about the history of the center. But the question I had is: are those 80 single-family homes you mentioned? Are those going to be affordable houses?
mm. That's a good question.
And then there was the discussion after that, and I said, people saying, "Well, they're affordable houses if you go to up the peninsula or this, that, and the other." I said, "Yeah," and so it begins.
Yeah.
When I lived in California, in Northern California, there were people. But when I left California, there were people commuting from Silicon Valley out past Tracy, which is a 2.5 hour drive either direction, to be able to afford a home. And
Mm.
these are not low income people. These are people whose combined income are $150,000 or more. And they have to go to Tracy. And they went to Hayward first, and then they went to San Leandro. Then they went out to Livermore. Then they went out to Tracy. I mean, it's just a continual move out. Same thing's going on in Seattle right now and Redmond. People are moving toward closer to the center of the state. In Kitsap Peninsula, if we do that, where do we go?
I don't know where that is. You have a few questions in the chat here. Michael is
Yeah, so
saying,
let's
so it
let's go with
seems
that.
like the simple solution is to stop making more people, and that's never going to happen. We are using up 1.6 times our available resources. How do we fill that gap? And then he also says, create new resources. How? Stop using resources altogether. How?
So I'm going to go back to the recycling thing. We don't really recycle in this country. We send it to other countries, and we're kind of haphazard about it, and it all goes through waste management. Matter of fact, I was, and I'm going to kind of dig myself a little hole here, which Marwan likes to watch me do. I was presenting to Tribal Advisory Board, and before my presentation, I watched Kitsap County Public Works talk about recycling. I'm thinking, oh, cool. So they're taking up the mantle of recycling. And something cool is going to happen, and they went right into the waste management pitch and about overseas, and China's not taking our stuff anymore, and we can't recycle milk cartons anymore, juice cartons anymore because they can't take those. And I'm going to tell you a story right here. There was a company, and I think that they still exist, but they're just scraping by, out of Davenport, Iowa, and the company's name was Rewall, and they started making OSB plywood replacement using milk and juice cartons.
Really?
And they were getting the material, they were pressing it together. It was strong, it was mold resistant, it was waterproof, and there were some other really cool features I'll talk about in a minute. But they had to get their material from Canada because we don't do enough recycling in this country for them to get those materials. Now, those are the very materials that we are now told we can no longer recycle.
Mm.
And I find that just insane. To answer Michael's question, we can reuse those materials. Now, I don't know about, I know you have construction experience. I don't know how many other people out there, but green board is what you use when you build a bathroom because of its mold and moisture resistance. What would you do if you could put milk and juice cartons, which are natively board by that, they're natively resistant, into bathrooms? It would replace green board in a heartbeat, and it would be much easier to do, and the cost is actually cheaper per board than the green board is. So there are lots of uses for this. Also, the milk coating on the outside, they had all kinds of interesting finishes on the outside of it because the milk and juice cartons would melt together and become cool patterns. And they had some that were just white. And they have a restaurant in, I believe it's Mississippi, that walled one whole wall with with this the white smooth whiteboard, and you could actually use it as a whiteboard. They would write the menu on the walls, and kids would come up and draw on the walls and stuff, and then wipe them down at night. It was very
Oh,
cool. So there's a lot of stuff. I just wanted to put them up on my walls in my office so that I could have giant whiteboards, but they are not thriving because they cannot get the materials, which means that they cannot be competitive. So those are the things we could recycle a lot more in this country, but we'd have to take it seriously. Now in Europe, the European Union passed laws requiring corporations to deal with their own waste and charging them for it. But we're the Wild West here in the United States for corporations. We don't regulate anything. We don't hold them accountable for anything. And this is where we are. So the answer to your question, Michael, hold corporations accountable for their waste and push reuse of it. You think that we can't reuse more glass than we're reusing? You think that we can't reuse more plastic? Why are we manufacturing plastic that we cannot reuse, that cannot be recycled? There was a company in Canada that was making roof tiles out of recycled plastic bags. They were struggling to get started because nobody wants to support a company that's reusing when mega corporations are going to sell you what they already have, and they don't have to invest in R&D or retool their machinery. That's just a reality. We're driving 100-year-old technology with new curves on the fenders and different paint jobs because they don't want to retool for something new. So what does it mean to be human? It means to support your other humans. How does this tie into everything we've talked about? People can't afford to live here. We're using up resources. If we don't come together and start having enough compassion for our fellow man to overcome our fear of working together and find our humanity and find commonality in our humanity, we won't be here. And it's going to go out with that mew of surprise on people's faces. But nobody told me.
No, I'm
So is
just
that
fearful that we're
it?
we're past the tipping point on being able to do something. There's so many distractions, you know.
Well, we are past the tipping point to stop climate change, but we can still address it. We are able to change our way of doing things and modernize how we look at things to make it more livable for us as it does change. But we have to have that one magical thing, that special wand called willpower. And for that, we need to have compassion for each other. We have to have compassion for ourselves. It takes $48,000 to live today. How many people in Kitsap County are making $48,000 or more? I think I said something slightly rude in the article. It says, "Are these going to be affordable housing, or is this more lures for Seattle for people from Seattle?"
Oh wow. Did it talk about the square footage at all?
No, didn't.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to read it. I saw the article, but I didn't get a chance to dig into it.
Yeah, it actually talked about the Haro Center more than it did anything else. But
And I won't play the video here, but just to bolster your point here, if you just go on YouTube and I just typed in America dumping recycling waste in Africa, you can see Kenya's plastic problem, US accused of waste dumping, the world's biggest e-waste sites, how the rich world's electronic waste affects poor countries, the environmental disaster that's fueled by used clothes. There was one here, uh, the most polluted places. Uh, the world's largest garbage dumps. I'll just play just a smidge of this on me, just so you can see how massive this is. Fair use. That caption up there, real quick here. I mean, this is a sea of waste. A sea.
oh, and for those of you who don't know this, we dump all of our landfill in Eastern Oregon. So you want to know where the resources are? They're right here.
You know, I'm wondering when our politicians on either side are going to really look inwardly and say, okay, we really need to focus on infrastructure, build America, buy America, and really solve our own problems. Like we have all these global conflicts going on. It's like, oh well, we're worried about Taiwan and we need these chips and this and that. And it's like, well, maybe we need to start manufacturing this, right? We talk about American excellence. It's like it's time for us to be excellent and start to rebuild our infrastructure and come up to date. I think what was it?
Well,
You're
as long as the bottom line is going to be affected by having to invest in this, it'll never happen
mhm.
by corporations until we regulate it happening. That means you're right. The politicians have to step in to do the regulation. And that's never going to happen as long as we have the dark money in politics. But more importantly, it's not going to happen until we, and I mean we, you, I, and all of the other users, stop voting red or blue and start voting for people who will best represent us. And I'm not.
Could you imagine living next to this?
No, I
Look,
can't, but I've seen it. But
these are
yep, it's awful. It is awful. It is a dirty secret that nobody wants to talk about. But it gives,
Well, it's not in our face, right?
well, no, because it's not in our backyard. If this was in our backyard, do you think we'd stand for it? If we were dumping here in
No.
Kitsap County, do you think we'd say it? We wouldn't be saying anything. But we send it to other countries that have no voice, and this is what we get. And then we're looking at the fact that, oh, you doubt that we're interconnected? Well, let me point out interconnection. So we send our stuff over there, and we buy new stuff, and we're using 1.7 Earths worth of resources. We're killing the oceans. We're losing species every single day.
Why?
Prices of food keep going up because we can't grow food anymore, and we're gonna have continue to have that problem because we don't look at things as connected.
Look at that.
Yeah, I look at that guy diving in that stuff, and I'm just like nauseates me.
Yeah, I'll take it off. Sorry, everyone. But we do need to
Yeah,
look at those.
yeah. So the point is learning to human. Learning to human is about learning that we are connected to everything, and everything is connected to us. We can ship this stuff to Indonesia. We can ship it to China. We can ship it anywhere else, but it's still our trash, and we're not reusing it. So it just becomes something that the future is going to deal with when we're not here anymore. And I wish I had done the research beforehand, but there's a scientific journal that says in 400 years after man is off the planet, there will be no sign that we existed here. None. All of our works, all of the things that we call great will be gone. All of it. So learn to human, people. Learn to be human. Learn to care about more than your close circle of friends that support your point of view. Step out and learn more. Now, we will be running another series of workshops soon. We're in negotiations right now about that. Um, and we're happy to bring people in. But what we're trying to do and what we're asking people to step up for is this is not someplace to go and be entertained. This is an interactive session of workshops to create the leaders of the communities that will help bring their neighborhoods together. And we want you to step up to join us in doing this because Marwan and I can't do it alone. And we never planned to do it alone. We plan to work with people to start creating networks of neighborhoods and roots networks to start changing things. Because we can complain about it a lot of time, but we actually have a plan on how to change it and how to create continuity going forward. Bitching about it gets us nowhere. Working on it gets us everywhere. And I don't intend to be one of the people that goes out with the surprise on my face that, oh, I didn't know. And if you do, best of luck to you. But those of you who don't, come talk to us.
Yeah, it's it's all scary, and there's so many layers to it. And I would say if you're feeling like, man, this is too much, it's analysis paralysis. Like, what can I do? What can little old me do? The conversations are important. I do agree with Mark in that respect, in that we've got to start, right? We can't just say, well, you know what, this is beyond me, this is too big, we're fighting against governments and we're fighting against business and all of these things. What we really do have, we the people, and at the bottom line, that is our greatest asset, each other. And so if we can learn to cultivate and have these conversations, we will begin to solutions and make change and push policies, and start to right the ship for sure.
Yeah, and we're not fighting against anybody. If you think about it, government and corporations are just machines. There are no people up there that we can fight. There's nobody that we're going to throw a punch at. When we change the way we do things, that changes the market, and the market will follow. And it is proven time and again when we push politicians to regulate and to put tariffs on and to make sure the corporations carry their responsibility. The corporations scream about it and talk about jobs lost and everything else. How many jobs do they actually perform? They've taken more jobs away than they've given. So when we get them to be regulated, when we get them to be responsible, they still make money. They may make a little less, but they make money, and our lives get better. But
Hmm.
we have to reprogram those machines by reprogramming our behavior, and we have to do that together. So, are you human? Yeah, I'm a human being. You're a human being. We're all human beings. But do we behave in a human manner? And for that, I think we need to relearn some stuff that we've forgotten over time.
If I may, what I'd like to do, because this really speaks to the human piece that you're talking about, I want to share an email that came to me. As you know, there's a lot of connective tissue with the shows. The next show is housing. The show after that is city council, and in that, one of the things that we're doing right now is trying to advocate for those that are experiencing homelessness uh, on MLK downtown. And there's power in numbers, and the more voices that speak. So a month ago, I spoke, and one other person spoke, and city council didn't really respond. 2 weeks ago, four, including myself, spoke, and they spent 20 minutes talking about it and saying, hey, they would like to get involved and start having more conversations on how to fix this issue. Said we are going to have a roundtable discussion at Pancake Breakfast in September. However, tonight is City Council, and you will have a opportunity for comment. But this is the part of the humanity that is sickening and concerning. And so this is the email that I got in. So I was encouraging people. I know that's a little hard to see. There's really no way for me to enlarge it, so I'm going to read it. I was encouraging people to speak, use their voice tonight, and advocate. We all have to be helped. We can't just help ourselves, right? We got to help those that are in the worst conditions. And so the report is, since people spoke out last time, there's been a notable crackdown on MLK. The parking lot that was where you all hauled away the trash was heavily enforced for trespassing laws. A garbage and recycling can were added, but the people were removed. Since the Bremerton Police Department have been positioning a car in that parking lot anytime there's a meal being served to send a message. In addition, there was a makeshift toilet that the unhoused had built and hidden for themselves down there. This was removed as well. Now people are forced to remain on the sidewalks on MLK until the evening when they are forced to break up into smaller groups and get out of the site, usually fleeing to the nearby neighborhood. Predictably, the neighborhoods start complaining about mentally ill people in their backyards on Facebook pages. I started to point out to these groups that if we were to properly care for the people on MLK, where they were welcome, these severely ill people wouldn't be forced to move into their yards. I think that the neighborhood group is receptive to finding a more care and less law enforcement approach to poverty and mental illness. It is an evergreen neighborhood group, and I think it might be good to get their input and involvement. And I also see an informal lived experience focus group has started meeting in place at my place every couple of weeks, and hopefully more voices can come to that. I share that because Mark is talking about the human element, right? Being human. This is the conditions that folks are facing on MLK, and I don't know how we can walk past them, drive past them, knowing that they're there and not advocate and try to change the situation. Uh, and this does seem retaliatory, right? Uh, Folks come down, try to do some work, try to help clean the place up and find solutions, and then uh, this is the report. Now, Jeff happens to live on MLK, so he is an eyewitness because he is there. Um, would you like to speak to that, Mark? Because I think this is really, really hits home
Yeah,
to what you've been.
yeah, I can't speak to it without speaking about othering
Mhm.
and talking about the fact that homelessness isn't going to go away; it's going to get worse. Let's go back to what we talked about before. It takes $48,000 to just live. My daughter and her fiance live together in a cracker box in West Bremerton. I mean, this place has had rats, it's had cockroaches, it's had ants, it's had all kinds of things. It's a freaking pit. and they pay an enormous rent for this one bedroom place. That's crap. I don't think I've ever lived in a place that bad, and I've lived in some places when I was young, and they make between them over $100,000 a year, and they're saving to buy a house. They're living here and struggling to save to buy a house, but one of their cars goes down. There's part of their paycheck gone. 46%, I can't say this often enough, but people need to understand this. 46%, 150 million plus American people are one paycheck away from homelessness. 46%, that's half the country. Is that acceptable? Is that human? Why is it? Because they're crazy, they're drug users, they're othered in some way, they're dirty people that make bad decisions. Well, hell, we all make bad decisions at some point in our life. Should we be penalized for it forever? Should we be homeless? Should we be othered everywhere else? These decisions are made. I mean, the mortgage crisis caused more homelessness. The jobs moving overseas caused more homelessness. The service jobs moving overseas. There aren't jobs that pay here. It causes homelessness. It's not going away because our economy is not getting better. So let me give you a little history lesson here.
Sure.
In the 70s, Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. And that's where the gold in Fort Knox supported our dollars. So $1 was worth $1 worth of gold stored in Fort Knox. It is the most secure way to back dollars. Okay? British had the sterling, they had sterling silver, the backing theirs. Later in the Reagan years, and I'm not going to just punish Republican presidents here, trust me. In the Reagan years, we deregulated everything, and we also said that our money is backed by our ability to manufacture. And in the Reagan years, manufacturing started going overseas. And then it was said that our money is backed by our ability to do service. I didn't realize at the time that meant waitresses and auto mechanics. And then the service jobs started going overseas. And then in the 1998, Bill Clinton and Alan Greenspan worked with Congress to overturn Glass-Steagall, which was the protections put in place over the banking industry and investment industry to prevent another 1929 depression. 9 years later, we had a first major recession, and while we call them different things, they have been rolling. Now we're saying that our money is backed by that our economy is strong, and our money is based on the stock market, which represents less than 5% of the employment in the country, and only really measures the money of the money going to the wealthy. So what does that say about the rest of us? What does that say about what we're backed by? And now we have the housing market crashing all across the country, and and people are making bank on real estate for a long time. And by the way, China is now allowed to own lots of land and companies in the United States. In the 80s, media was not allowed to be owned by foreign countries. Now PSE is partially owned, or actually is wholly owned, by an out-of-country conglomerate out of Canadian, French, and Australian interests. So when somebody says to me national security, I laugh in their face rudely and say, how do we have social security when our utilities are owned by foreign entities? When our media is owned by foreign entities? So you want to talk about how homelessness happens and how to be better about homelessness? It's up to us, people. It's up to us coming together and deciding enough is bloody enough. It's up to us to come together and say, we need to change the way we look at things and fix some of the problems. And it's going to be us that does it because nobody else is. The only system that has ever worked to change things in a permanent way is people coming together and creating a grassroots network. And I'm not talking about one protest. I'm not talking about one letter signing campaign. I'm not talking about voting blue or red. What I'm saying is we need to sit down and seriously talk about what it means to be human and how we treat each other and how we're willing to be treated. And then we have to look at how we are being treated and what those factors are and come up with an active plan to change it together. If we don't do that, in 100 years, you're going to have that surprised look on your face. And until then, it's going to be consistently worse and worse and worse until we're drinking muddy water and have no food on the shelves. We can't take
So
all of the resources for profits. We can't because we have nothing left. And what's
so let me
stupid
ask you.
is the people getting the profits, they're going to be right there with us in the end.
Oh, that's facts. Let me ask you, since this is a tangible example, what recommendation would you give to folks to what action item can they do in this scenario?
Okay, so two people made a conversation to the city council and they ignored it. Four people, they talked about how they want to do something about it and then retaliated against the people talking about it. If you bring 400 people into the city council and say you guys are all going to lose your seats unless you turn around and do this, do you realize that nobody on the city council has been elected by more than a 400 person margin because there's small little districts and not every and so few people vote. 400 people could turn the entire city council. You get 400 people down there talking, saying this is unacceptable behavior, and we know this is what's going on. And people get down there with cameras and film it and put it out on social media and say, you talk about why these people are in the neighborhood. Here they are, right here, because the police are getting them out of the places where they've been staying. And by the way,
Mm.
they're not. Nobody chooses to be homeless, or maybe a small fraction of the people choose to be homeless. This is something that happens to me. And if you weren't a drug user when you became homeless, if you weren't crazy when you became homeless, it won't take long for you to get there because it's not a human way to live. And it's not because they're living in some enclave in the forest together, whatever. It's because they have nothing. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. They don't know. They don't have a support structure in place. And it's not that KRL or KCR and other people aren't doing the very best job they can, but they don't have the resources. I had a guy today saying, "Well, those are going to be fair market homes." Talking about the article again, and that have talked to Habitat and Humanity about putting up affordable housing. And I came back saying, so you're telling me that it's Habitat for Humanity's responsibility to house all of the people who need affordable housing and low income housing.
Mm.
That's a little limiting. Mackenzie Scott just gave Habitat for Humanity $425 million. I have no idea how that's going to translate to Kitsap County and what they're going to get, but there are almost 300,000 people in this county. If you think that over half of us are making marginal salaries to keep us from really becoming homeowners, and we're going to go through that process of not being able to afford to live here and have to go down the peninsula to Shelton or wherever else after that, and start thinking about it, how many of us are going to end up homeless in this process because we weren't prepared and we couldn't pull together enough resources to move to Belfair or move to Shelton? So what tangible thing we can do? Get 400 people who care to the city council meeting. Get a petition out in front of Safeway. Get a petition out in front of um, um, Fred Meyer. Get a petition out in front of wherever you can that's in the city limits to get signatures saying we cannot treat homelessness this way. Put a referendum in front of the city council saying we will not tolerate this behavior. We need a place for the homeless people. And when they come back with, well, how would you suggest I do that? We can't afford that. And I said, well, we got Pendleton House. We can figure out a way to do this. Maybe some of those record permitting that you've had will you can aim some of those dollars at finding ways to put to support homeless people.
Record is correct.
Yeah, I did hear that on the show.
Yeah, we went over the budget on Sunday. Which again, we need to make the change. We have to know what's going on and then advocate.
Yeah.
I love your advice there because to get to 400, you got to start at 1. So making yourself present will bring other people there. Let's see, we got a comment in the chat here. A major issue is that a lot of these vulnerable people will not go on record saying anything due to fear of retaliation. You're absolutely right. And so
No argument.
to correct something that Mark said, they're not retaliating against the four of us that spoke out. It is appearing that the retaliation is against the folks that are experiencing homelessness. And so
So
that
that
was
fear
what
is
they
real.
shared. Yeah, when we did our community barbecue, resilient ecosystems a few months ago at MLK, that was the feedback, which is why we didn't end up interviewing folks down there, because they felt like they were going to get scooped up and arrested, and so they're very wary and just distrusting of you know folks being
So
good
so
players.
that so that anxiety we all feel all of the time. Okay, I was coming back on Friday from a place called Roy in down south of Olympia, and
Mm.
I ended up with this Washington State Patrol right behind me from essentially Gravelly Lake all the way on to the 16. And I was traveling within the speed limit, but I got to tell you, I was kind of struggling with the anxiety of having a Washington State Patrol right behind me on the freeway. I'm thinking about all
Wow.
the things that could be wrong with my car. I'm thinking, am I speeding? Can I find my insurance card if I needed to? Is my registration where I think it should be? All of these things, because every time you see a police officer now, you kind of gotta, whether they're a good police officer or not, with all of the news, you wonder. That's just an example of the anxiety we carry. Am I going to be able to carry? Am I going to be able to make bills? Am I going to be able to make payroll? Am I going to? I mean, we carry anxiety all of the time. Now, take the anxiety you carry every day, whether you want to admit it or not, and multiply it exponentially, and you start getting to the very, very bottom of what people who are experiencing homeless feel.
Yeah. Michael says now, imagine you're a minority.
Yeah, exactly so. And we had that conversation a couple weeks ago. But
Well, I appreciate you sharing that because, folks might not think, oh, a middle-aged white man would have that experience of anxiety if the police are driving behind them. And you're a law-abiding citizen, right? A
I
champion of
am.
the Constitution and everything else, and there's this anxiety and fear from that. So that's thank
Yeah,
you for sharing.
yeah, all the time. I mean, it's like it's stupid, and anxiety is what it is, but it's part of our culture. Our culture creates anxiety. It's part of the way we get controlled, or I shouldn't say controlled, manipulated
Mm.
into acting against our own best interests. Coming together and sharing that anxiety and talking to other people and finding commonalities, that's the way we combat it. That's the way we learn to cooperate and overcome.
Well, I gotta say, I'm in a really good mood today, and I encourage folks to tune in to City Council tonight. The link is on their website. I'll find it and put it up if you want to make a 3 minute comment. You don't have to use the entire 3 minutes. You could talk for 30 seconds. You don't have to talk about the situation on MLK. Talk about what's important to you, and just practice making your voice heard. It's at 5:30, and like I said, I'll put the link in the chat here in just a second.
Yeah.
But make your voice heard. You can talk for 30 seconds and then jump off and continue on with your evening. But there is power in numbers. If you can make it to the pancake breakfast, if you can make it to the neighborhood barbecues, if you can make it to the workshops that Rosecco will be hosting, it's a way for us to change the direction in which we've been going. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We can't be Monday morning armchair quarterbacks. We've got to get in the game. And it's really kind of a low barrier. We just start by getting together and talking, right?
Yep.
And then from there, it grows and it can blossom into some really beautiful things. And we can begin to support each other and then support others at the same time.
Right. And I'll call myself out on the fact that, Marwan asked me to give a plan for the people on MLK and homeless people, and I didn't actually address that. So, not being a politician, I'd like to actually take a moment to address that and say
Thank you,
that I
sir.
don't have to say that I don't have a direct answer for that. I don't know of a way to do that. On the other hand, That's the whole idea of the jigsaw puzzle. I'm one piece. If we get enough pieces on the table, we can think it through and come up with a plan. So bring your piece to the puzzle. Let's talk about it. By the way,
You know,
I want to welcome Michael
yeah.
to the board of directors. He is now our newest member of the board of directors.
What? All right. Congratulations and welcome, sir. Great
And
to
he's
have you
here
here.
holding, yeah, he's here holding Marwan's and my feet to the fire.
I love it. And shout out to Terry who just came online here. And what I was gonna say is one of the things that you can do is, again, the humanity piece of it is just saying, "Hey, I see you," you know, and you can do that at city council. You don't have to necessarily say, "I need to advocate for this and that, and I got stats and numbers." I care about the people downtown. I just want you to know that.
Yep.
It could be that simple.
Yeah.
Because they
I
need to
see
hear, right?
you.
Yeah. Well, what politicians say is, well, no one told us, so we're gonna go and work on filling potholes and building sidewalks, and so the the tall blade of grass gets cut, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. It's really a true
Yep.
statement.
I'd like to know, and I'm sure that there's a way to go back to it. And I'm sorry, I will apologize in advance. I don't have the time to go back and look at it, but I'd like to know how many times this subject has been brought up in council meetings. I'd like to know how many times we've been talking. They've had comments about affordable housing because that way, when you go back, you can read to them. Well, let's see. I don't know how you say you don't know when you were mentioned in this time and this time and that time and this time and this time. It was brought up again and again and again. So how is it that you don't know when it has been in the record in the minutes for all of these times?
Mhm. All
So
right, so
part of it
this
is,
is
yeah,
the
we're just watching.
yeah, this is the city council meeting Zoom. That is in the link. The meeting is at 5:30. They do open comments toward the beginning. So again, you won't even be on for hours and hours waiting. So please do come on and make a comment, for sure. Michael says, "Don't know" sounds an awful lot like "don't care."
Yeah, kind of not the opposite of learning to human, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and I
It
think
does.
unfortunately, the potential apathy isn't so much apathy, but as more of us are struggling and trying to hang on, we're not in a space to advocate for other people because we're trying to hang on ourselves, which I think is part of the game, right? It's like if we keep everyone on the hamster wheel going so fast, they can't even, they're just trying to keep themselves from falling down. They can't advocate for anyone else. And it's like, well, this is the way that you do that, right?
And it's a catch 22 because yeah, you have to come together to change things. And if you're so busy trying to survive that you can't come together, things will never change. And then we go out with that surprised look on our face.
Hmm.
But I did all the right things. So I do want to say, let me swallow this ice, sorry, that Resilient Ecosystems is about to completely update their webpage. I'm hoping to have it out by the end of this week. I'm waiting for some people to get back to me.
Oh, wow.
We have invited 14 people to be on our advisory board. We have been declined about 3 people, but I'm still waiting to hear back from others. If any of you want to be on the advisory board, please let us know. Essentially, the entire responsibility of the advisory board is if we have a plan or a project we're working on, we will put a synopsis together and get it out to you. You read the synopsis and ask questions. Tell us whether you think it's good or bad. Let us know what you think because if we do it with our small group, we aren't covering what the large group needs, and we want feedback from people. The broader, more diverse a group, the better off we are.
I like it.
So
I like it.
That will be out by the end of the. I'm hoping to have the website up by the end of the week. It's depending on that. It'll be a lot more interactive. There's still a ton of information there, but it won't be quite so in your face right up front. lets you kind of take a breath as you get into the information. And also, I am working on a second book. I know, like I have enough time to do this. But I decided to write a science fiction story, science fiction book that is a future past narrative, looking at our lives today and the project today from 100 years in the future. And a teacher
Okay.
talking to her class about what brought the change about that we experience today.
Like Days of Future Past?
So, yeah, a little bit. It's like, okay, so you're a teacher in a classroom and you're talking about a journal from 2022 written by one of us that talks about the struggles we have and the problems that we're seeing and how we need to change things. But you're looking at it from the other end of the change. So we succeeded and things changed and people on the other end of this do it better. But only being 100 years in the future is they do it a little bit better. But
Mm.
they're living better. They've addressed some of the issues. They're bringing people together. And the last chapter, spoiler, is going to be 100 years in the future from them reading the notes from the classroom.
All right, I look forward to it. You're already spoiling.
Well, most of the story is in the details, so that's just kind of like it's building on looking into the future on the other side. Because you and I always talk about the change, and you
Yeah.
said, well, in Roddenberry's story, it's the Third World War, and I'm saying it doesn't need to be the Third World War. It needs to be a catastrophe large enough to get our attention and for us to pay attention to it.
Well, right now, pick one. We've got
Yeah.
multiple
Yep.
simultaneously.
So the whole point of the book is to tell about it from the other side to show people we can get there and what it looks like from that point of view to the best of
Ab-
my ability.
Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna give you the final word. You know that on the what is this? The second Tuesday of the month? Or is this the third Tuesday? Third Tuesday. We
Yes.
have the KSAP Housing and Homeless Coalition, which starts at 2 p.m. We hope that you will flip over and join us there. We're a myriad of organizations. Will be giving updates and sharing information. It's a really powerful. Usually, it's about 90 minutes, but there's so many different organizations that are sharing information out that either you can use for yourself or pass on to others. I also want to mention the 9/11 memorial will be on September 11th. It's going to start at 9/11 at Evergreen State Park over by at the Tower Memorial in the park. So we hope to see you there. I know there will be some firefighters. I think they're going to have some different workstations and demonstrations and giveaways for that emergency management. So I encourage people to come out and learn about that. You've heard us talk about Cascadia Rising. Very important. We got to get ready. We cannot wait.
Right. Right. And
But
I have asked about a booth there. I'm hoping that we will be represented as well.
got you. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. I will follow up
And
on that.
and it is our first anniversary, Marwan.
Ah, is it really?
Yeah. We met last year at the 9/11 event.
Seriously? Oh,
Yes.
hey. So we'll have to talk about that. Well, we should just do a show when it comes around to 9/11 and talk about that experience of that year. Because I think that's the work,
Yep.
right?
It is the work. It's how we've had this discussion and grown through this. So my final word is be good to each other. And I know you have to get right to your other show. So be good to each other. And if you enjoy the material, share it, talk to people about it, and get people to watch the show.
All right. For Mark Boatwright-Frost, I am Marwan Cameron. This is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces. We will see you next week.